as always, I welcome your conversation. If you do have a comment, a compliment, or something you want to get an answer on, I might be the guy to help you with that. I've been in this field, the fitness and nutrition industry, for a long time, a long time, since my late teens, and I'm coming up on almost 69 years of age in June. Proud to say that, and I'm here to set an example and give baby boomer listeners out there hope that their better days are not behind them, but in front of them. That's why it's called the good life. And so I want to talk more and educate my audience, because my background is in education, and about this stuff called insulin resistance. I mean, it's all over the place. This is why the number one selling medication today is a diabetic medication used for weight loss. Ozempic, Mounjaro, things like that, used for weight loss. And when you look at that in general, what causes weight in most people? They'll say, well, they're just eating too much and not doing enough activity. My answer to that is this. It's not that they're eating too much, they're eating too much of the wrong things, which causes the body to get into a state of what we call insulin resistance. And so you understand what this actually is. So when you sit down and eat these foods, you'll have an understanding what Dr. Fitness means by don't eat that, or don't eat it that often. And insulin resistance, it affects so many different diseases and so many different outcomes of not recovering from a disease. And we're not being given this information by the medical community, nor the media, or big pharma, because we are put it this way, we're a marketing tool. The populace of this country is used as a marketing tool for someone's goods. And as much as I love most of my doctor friends, I have a number of them, they probably don't know this. They're being used. They're being used to feed who? Big pharma. When's the last time you went to your doctor with one of these conditions? High blood pressure, which affects 1 in 2 adults. Diabetes or pre-diabetes, which affects nearly 140 million people, I should say. Heart disease, which affects about 130 million. Heart failure, which affects about 8 million. Kidney disease, in fact, kidney disease, chronic kidney disease, usually 70% of diabetics are the number one cause of kidney disease. Non-alcoholic fatty liver, it means you get a fatty liver without booze. Cancer and aging, all a product of insulin resistance. So for you to fight this beast, you first have to understand what this actually is. Insulin resistance occurs when we overconsume high carbohydrate based foods too often, too long. And these foods are actually things like bread, rice, pasta, corn products, sweets, whole grains, potatoes, any starchy vegetable, fruit juices, soda pop. The list goes on and on and on. The things that you find down the aisle of a grocery store. And the average American consumes probably about anywhere between 60 and 65 to 70% of their total caloric intake daily coming from these foods. So we're overloading the body with these extra carbohydrates, sugars, that's what they are. And insulin resistance occurs when we can't manage the overload of carbohydrates for extended periods of time. To put this in perspective, the majority of carbohydrates, when they're converted to glucose, because all carbohydrates except fiber are converted to glucose. That's sugar. Fiber is cellulose. We do not digest it. That's why it passes through the system. So in the body, when we convert these sugars, carbohydrates, into glucose. We store a majority of this as glycogen. That's starch-like. It converts it back into glycogen from glucose to be stored in muscle and organs. Primarily, the organ that we store glucose in as glycogen is the liver. You store some glucose as glycogen in other organs, but not that much. In the muscle, to put this in perspective, we have maybe about a teaspoon of sugar in the blood. That's it. In all these liters of blood, about a teaspoon. That's it. Each muscle, 1 pound of muscle, you store 2.04 grams. Now, there's 28 grams in an ounce, okay? 28 grams in an ounce. Just remember that, okay? So more than 10 times. 2.04 grams of glucose, glycogen, per 1 pound of muscle. 2.04. That's minute. Remember, 28 grams in 1 ounce. So if you have 100 pounds of muscle in your body, ladies, you can store approximately 200 grams of glycogen. Okay, put this in perspective. All right? It's about 8 ounces. That's it. In the whole body. That's it. In the whole body. No more than that. Once we fill this up, unless you do it by moving around, exercise, we store some in the liver to keep the blood sugar stable. All right? That helps to feed the brain. Again, 1 teaspoon in all the blood in the body of sugar, of glucose. When we dump, again, 8 ounces. Okay, now, when the average American dumps daily about 300 or 400 grams of carbohydrates per day, when the maximum storing ability is 200 in a female at 100 pounds of muscle, which is quite a amount of muscle, all right? You're nearly doubling the amount of glucose or carbohydrates that you can store in the body. What happens to it? It's converted into fat, triglycerides, because we have an infinite ability to store fat in the human body. That's why people get larger and larger and larger and larger. We have to find a place to take and put this sugar. Okay? And so we make it into fat to store as fat on the body. All right? Insulin resistance occurs when the process of keeping the blood sugar in a certain range no longer happens because you're putting out so much insulin to try to store this stuff as glycogen and fat that your body runs into a problem doing that. In fact, a person who's diabetic has 3 to 5 times the insulin levels of a non-diabetic. 3 to 5 times. And when they become diabetic, it's not working as well as it should be, and they're basically the pancreas can't put out any more of this stuff. So their blood sugar goes up, the body's trying to do something with it. Okay, and that's why in the past they used to refer to diabetes as sticky pee, because the pee becomes sticky, literally, because you're dumping sugar. And when this happens, literally what's going on inside the human body in regards to your endothelial cells, the cells that line the artery walls, okay, all the cells in the organs, okay, your skin, because aging's tied to this. Your body's literally going into a state of basically disarray, not knowing what to do. And that's America today. Because we have 42%, almost 43% of our population who's obese, and add another 30 to 40% that are overweight. We've got a real problem. So this is us today. I hope you're understanding exactly what I'm trying to say. Okay, that this insulin resistance problem that we have in America today is literally caused by our diet and lack of activity. So what I do in general, I know a lot about this stuff, by the way, is I work with people with this every day. That's why I opened my first center back in 1994 called the Fitness Institute. to help people in my age group get the truth and how they can make these changes in their lifestyle to help to cut down their needs for medication. Okay. And if they do get sick, they get past it faster. All right. All these various things that we deal with as we get older. So if this is you and you've got a lot of belly fat, you're sluggish, you can hardly move around, you don't feel, you have high blood pressure, you're type 2 diabetic, you have cardiovascular issues, we can help you without drugs. It's called lifestyle, exercise and nutrition and coaching. Now, here's some interesting stuff that you may find very useful. It's not me saying this. It's other universities and people saying it as well. University of Alabama, Birmingham. Study focuses on low carbohydrate, high fat diet's effect on older population. Now, I can say this because I'm in that category now of being a little bit older. When I see people my age eating a diet not like Lance's, I'm not the happiest guy on earth because it's like, what are you doing that for? Most likely you're one of the people I'm referring to when it comes to insulin resistance. It says a study published in Nutrition and Metabolism from researchers with the University of Alabama at Birmingham Nutrition Obesity Research Center observed improvements in body composition, fat distribution, and metabolic health in response to an 8-week low-carbohydrate diet. Older adults with obesity are at particularly high risk of developing cardiometabolic diseases such as type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. Rather than total body mass, disposition of fat in certain areas such as the abdominal cavity and skeletal muscles may confer this greater risk of development of this disease. It says the study's lead author, Amy Goss, PhD, RDN, an assistant professor at University of Alabama, Birmingham's Department of Nutrition Sciences, Goss says her team aimed to determine if a very low carbohydrate diet or high fat diet would deplete these fat depots and preserve lean mass without intentional caloric restriction in older people with obesity, thereby improving outcomes related to cardiometabolic diseases such as insulin sensitivity and lipid profile. Lipid profile is your cholesterol, literally, and triglycerides. After 8 weeks of intervention, despite the recommendation to consume a weight-maintaining diet, the group consuming the very low-carbohydrate diet lost more weight and total body fat mass than the control group. Egg consumption was an important part of the low-carbohydrate prescription. Goss and her team provided eggs to the participants in the diet group and asked them to consume at least 3 per day. Now, this is one of these foods that they've been pushing on people not to eat for such a long time. Gotta watch the fat in the eggs. It's going to cause cardiovascular problem. Your cholesterol going to go up. Bullpucky. The primary difference in fat loss between the two groups was from the abdominal cavity, that's the belly, and skeletal muscle depots. We also found significant improvement in the overall lipid profile that would reflect decreased risk of cardiovascular disease. Further insulin sensitivity improved in response to the low carbohydrate diet, reflecting reduced risk of type 2 diabetes. Overall, we observed improvements in body composition, fat distribution, and metabolic health in response to the 8-week low-carbohydrate diet. Now, what would be the outcome if they went longer than 8 weeks? Think about that now. One, you'd probably start to see a reduction in many of the medications that people use today, particularly in my age group. Because the average person in my age group is probably taking between 5 and 10 different medications in a day. Easily. Because when we know when we go on a low carbohydrate diet, one of the immediate effects is a reduction or a decrease in blood pressure. Mm-hmm. Some of you out there, I know you're listening to me now, are probably taking 2, maybe 3 blood pressure drugs a day. A day. Or more. Along with a diuretic, along with a statin drug. I can go on and on with this. But one of the effects of going on eating less carbohydrates is you dump extra sodium. Now, sodium is an essential electrolyte. You need that or you die, by the way. But you dump the extra that you don't need because the kidneys will not retain the extra sodium. It dumps it. Then you'll see a reduction in blood pressure. And then when you have a reduction in blood pressure, you need less medication. Otherwise, your blood pressure is too low. That's one of the effects. Then you also see a reduction in cholesterol and triglycerides. That takes a little bit longer. Because when we know when your triglycerides go up, you are definitely insulin resistant. And the magic number with researchers out there is not the 150 that they throw at you when you have your blood test. The magic number, the cutoff point, is 60. You don't want triglycerides over 60. That's when we start to see problems. You don't want blood sugar over 90. That's when you start to see lots of problems. In fact, Cleveland Clinic takes all their patients whose blood sugar runs 90 and above and tests them. They classify them or qualify them as pre-diabetics, insulin resistant. So when you go on this kind of diet, you're losing visceral fat out of the belly. Of course, that fat's all close to the organs and the bloodstream, so it gets into the bloodstream real easily and causes all kinds of problems. These same fat cells release cytokines. You've heard of the cytokine storm during the COVID epidemic. Remember that pandemic? I think called pandemic, right? You're releasing these inflammatory proteins that cause inflammation from the fat in your belly. The fat in the belly does that. So this diet has many benefits to it. Now, I don't want to leave the exercise part out either, because I'm an exercise advocate. Exercise also helps reduce belly fat. The right kind of exercise. It also helps us seniors stay more mobile. In other words, up doing things, enjoying life. And one of the things as seniors, what we do, or two, I should say, is our diets stink. We eat lots of sugar, lots of carbohydrates, stuff it in our face. We don't need it. We're not hungry and we're still eating. And we sit too much. We sit way too much. What's the saying? An object at rest remains at rest unless acted upon by a moving force? Yes. So anyhow, I'm addressing our seniors that way. Talking about how I had somebody actually, I got a kick out of this stuff, text me and ask me, could I repeat my favorite restaurant? It's Fogo de Chao, again, Fogo de Chao on Scottsdale and Lincoln, all right, on the west side of the street. But anyhow, it's just interesting because as we get older, we start to really focus on food more than we do on exercise, and we should be focusing on exercise. Because one of the things that, that I've experienced in my life is my ability to be able to do a lot of things that people my age cannot do. And it's like this. I'm going to be like Jack LaLanne when I kick the bucket. Jack LaLanne was 96 years of age, and the day before he passed, he was in the gym working out. 96 years of age, and he died from pneumonia, is what he died from. Now, he probably could have lived a little longer if he took his daughter's advice and went into to the doctor, but he didn't trust doctors. This is what he said. Don't trust doctors. Never go to doctors. I'm not going to do it now. But anyhow, 96, pretty good. That gives me almost 30 more years if I live to be that age. And so seniors, if you take some of my advice, get up and move around. There are studies that have been done that show the comparison between taking prescription medications for sicknesses like heart disease, all right, diabetes and things like this, all these stroke, in comparison to exercise. And he found that the exercise was as or more effective, Tufts University did this study, by the way, than the prescription drug. Now, when was... I got to keep it under control, Dr. Fitness. Keep it under control. Don't lose it now. Studies were done with over 300,000 people to see these results with exercise. And to get a drug license, when they do studies on them, they're used on 500 or 600 people only. That's it. So you take the numbers, run the numbers. 300,000 versus 500 to 600. But you don't hear that. If you go to your doctor, someone my age group or older, okay, you're there for your physical, whatever it may be, and they give you a prescription. Here's the drug. Take this down to the pharmacy, get it filled. Who benefits from that? The doctor really doesn't benefit from that. He's not making money off that. In most cases, I'm sure of that. Big Pharma does. All you got to do is watch cable TV, because, my favorite news station, talk station is Fox. I like watching Fox. I like the programming. But if you watch it, and I get up early in the morning, like 3:30, 4 o'clock at the latest, and it's nonstop drug commercials. And I get wound up when I see that stuff. And one of them's for Jardiance. I know you probably heard me say this before. They have people that are very overweight, dancing around, Jardiance, the pill with whatever. Okay, the pill that matters, the little pill that does what. You got the picture. I'm going, they look like they're happy. And one of them shows them carrying food around, too. Jardiance, a diabetic medication. No one is happy when they're having to take medications for a disease. So they're using this marketing tool showing people that are overweight, that are heavy, to people who are overweight or heavy. They're marketing them. Take my pill. Not showing people, here's the Jardiance. I lost all this weight by diet and exercise, because they have that little disclaimer at the bottom, with diet and exercise. So the person thinks, well, I can get mine under control by taking Jardiance. So let's take another medication. Not saying diet and exercise. Jardiance will help with this too. No. Show people like they are. So they get the prescription drug for the problem that they've got. Nutrition, exercise. You cannot, that's the secret formula to overall health and wellness as we get older. You cannot get around that. Nutrition and exercise. Now, one of the other things you can do when it comes to this too is keep things in working. In other words, I compare myself to a finely tuned automobile. If I rotate the tires, change the plugs, take care of the car, it lasts a long time. My father-in-law had a Ford van that he had nearly 1 million miles on his van because he took care of the motor. Okay? Welcome back to the show. We got about less than 10 minutes. About 10 minutes? Okay. All right. I'm hammering home on this stuff today. When it comes, I'm such a proponent of low-carbohydrate eating. I really am for such a long, long time. And to give you a little bit of my history, why I went in this direction, is about 1991. I was diagnosed with, about 1991, something like that. Anyhow, you're looking at 30-some years, okay? I was diagnosed with disseminated valley fever. Now, disseminated means it moved. Okay, most people, when they get valley fever out here, it's isolated in the lungs, and and they put you on medication, or you just passes through and that's it. It can be a very serious problem. 3 to 5% of people get disseminated. Lance he's an odd guy. Whenever Lance gets sick, he never does. He always gets the worst kind of stuff. Okay, because whatever it is, it has to really overload him to get him down. Well, disseminated, it moved from my lungs to my collarbone. And this stuff was growing in her for 4 years. I had 4 surgeries in that joint before they finally told me what it was. And the doctors just said, you have disseminated valley fever. You're going to have this the rest of your life. You'll be on powerful antifungal drugs. All right. And you might die from it. Told me about this is the truth now. Told me about an 18-year-old female who had disseminated valley fever. It was diagnosed with. About 2 weeks later, she had passed away. I knew a Mr. America out of California who had it and passed away. And I left that office and I said, I'm not ready to die yet. I have too much to offer. I have young kids and a beautiful wife who I love with all my heart. And I need to be around longer. I don't want to go. This is 1991. It's a long time ago. So I'm taking the antifungals. I'm reading and researching. This is the microorganism. Fungus lives off of what? Sugar, carbs. And at that time, I was eating a very high carbohydrate diet because I was told this is what you do if you're bodybuilding, you want to build mass. But I wasn't processed. It was like potatoes and whole grain and all the things they try to tell you to be a healthy diet. And I end up with the worst kind of belly fever you can get. So I changed my diet. Changed it. Plus, my wife and I, we had 5 miscarriages, and there was something wrong there. Okay. So anyhow, I changed my diet. And I'm going back and forth to the doctor over a couple of year period of time. And they use a test called the coxy fixation titer. It's literally looking at the antibodies your body's producing to fight off this infection. Okay, so and it comes back in numbers like 1 to 2, which is non-detectable, 1 to 4, which is stable. Then it doubles every time they take the solution and they mix it with the blood before they can't see any antibodies against the infection anymore. And after 2 years of not being on a medication, I was on it for the first couple of years, changed my diet. So after 4 years, 2 years of not being on medication, I go back to the doctor and he says, the drugs are working really, really, really well. We're coming back 1 to 2, 1 to 4 for 2 years. I said, Doc, I'm not taking the drugs. He goes, what? He got really upset. He says, if you need a second opinion, I could send you. I said, calm down, calm down, calm down. I don't need a second opinion. I need you just in case. All right? Because this kind of infection, it can move to the brain, all your different organs, stuff like this. So he says, well, what are you doing? I told him I'm eating low carbohydrate, and this is how I exercise, and watch the carbs because carbs feed. He said, that makes a lot of sense. This is how we treat people with candida. He said, interesting enough, I had an HIV patient who came in who literally got off and I'm just saying what he told me. All right? Don't go, then I says, he had an HIV patient who came in, same results I was getting, told him he was doing the same exact diet, was off the drugs. I'm just telling you that. Okay. So from that time on, okay, literally, I have this coxy titer now every couple of years. Same thing, 1 to 2, 1 to 4. The infection is still in my system, but my body's controlling it, my immune system, by watching the food source for the sickness. Now they're doing a lot of research now using this kind of eating with cancer treatment as well, in combination with chemo drugs or radiation. So the chemo drugs actually work better because you're not giving the cancer a food source, because the PET scan is based on literally radioactive sugar, because cancer cells have 10 to 20 times the insulin receptors, 10 to 20 times the insulin receptors as normal cells do, and they produce their own insulin. So which is to do what? Push sugar into the cell to feed the cell. So cut the carbs down. That's how I came up with my diet that I follow today. Now, we've seen so many people reduce or get off medications. Believe me, I'm a proponent for that reason. That's why I follow this way of eating. Now, it doesn't mean Dr. Fitness doesn't take a break, because I do. I usually have 2 meals a week that I eat whatever I want. It's not because I I got to have that. It's because it's a break. Psychologically. It's a break from the diet, okay, from my regimen. Then I'm back on it. And then normally I eat 2 meals a day. On Saturday, I have lunch. I have tuna, or today I had crab salad. But the rest of the week, it's 2 meals, breakfast and dinner. That is it. So I did the intermittent fasting before intermittent fasting. So if you're one of those people out there and you're sick and tired of having these issues, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, you're overweight, you're sick and tired of taking all these medications, then call me or send me a text.